Hi, and welcome to our home group series on the book of Revelation. We're calling it Endgame because we're taking a look at the major themes in the book of Revelation, and we're trying to understand what is God's goal with all of humanity and with all of life. What is the end game? Firstly, let's take a quick look at the book of Revelation just to get you up to speed. The book of Revelation is the last book of the Bible, and it really caps off what began in the book of Genesis with creation. So the Bible begins with creation and it finishes with the end of days. It's a series of prophetic revelation about Jesus Christ given to John, the disciple John, with the angel as a messenger. What you need to understand about the book of Revelation, though, is that even though it says a lot of things about the future and things that we have never seen, like the throne room, heaven, the end of days, judgment, we need to actually take those things seriously. Biblical prophecy, which is where the book of Revelation sits, is actually different from any other kind of prophecy that is out there. Whether somebody gives you a prophetic word on a Sunday service, or you see something on YouTube or on Facebook, I want to put it to you that biblical prophecy sits on a very special category. The last time biblical prophecy was employed to talk about Jesus, it was in the Old Testament, and it prophesied about Jesus' first coming. It turns out a lot of those specific details were actually spot on, from prophetic words about Jesus being born in Bethlehem, through to being a lamb that was slain, through to him being pierced on the side, through to even John the Baptist coming before Jesus. We also know about biblical prophecy that not only did it come to pass, but when Jesus came that first time, as prophesied, it transformed our whole world. So we're not talking about a faith that is removed from our historical life. In fact, we still celebrate Easter today. We still live with all the benefits of the rise of Christianity and the transformation that took place because of Jesus Christ rising from the dead in our world, leading to universities, hospitals, the rise of the West, the transformation of the world we live in, and many of the freedoms that we have today. That's why I think we need to look especially in the book of Revelation. But I'll be honest with you, it is a hard book to understand. That's why through the series, we're going to look at the major themes in the book of Revelation. It's one N and not plural, because it is the revelation of Jesus. But one thing that does repeat in this book is actually cycles. If we take a Hebraic lens of looking at Revelation, we'll see that all through even the Old Testament, we repeat ourselves. Our sins repeat. We promise God that we're going to do things, and then we fall down, and then we make mistakes. We get ourselves in trouble. He forgives us, and then we repeat the cycle again. We see cycles repeat of types of Jesus even in the Old Testament. One of the reasons why these cycles are there is one is because we are very predictable people, and not much has changed about humanity. But two is so that when the new thing comes along, we have seen some version of it. Can I put it to you that when we get to the end game, when the end times come, we will actually be able to see some familiarity of it. That God has been telling the story of the end game. He's been preparing the way for the end times since the beginning of history. He's been preparing the redemption of all of mankind since the fall. The three major themes we'll be looking at is good versus evil, worship, and love. And so let's begin today with good versus evil. I want to ask a question. It's a question everyone asks at some point in time. Why would a good God allow bad things to happen? I mean, for some people, the answer to this question has marked the end of their faith. Or maybe their faith or your faith is dying a slow death because of this question. Why would a good God allow bad things to happen? There's already so much injustice in the world, right? And even if you believe that God himself doesn't do bad things, if he's God, why does he allow bad things to happen? Natural disasters, governments, greed, abuse. Isn't it true though, that whenever we talk about the bad in the world, we think about the evil that is like out there. Stop the evildoers, stop the corrupt people, the liars, the abusers. In reality, when we ponder that, when we ask that God needs to be a just God, we ignore and play down the bad or the evil that's in us. We have a tendency as human beings, all of us, to make excuses and think we're not that bad. Have you ever talked to an abuser? I have. As a pastor, I've sat down with somebody who's physically abused his wife. They give all kinds of excuses. They have some version of, you have to understand, I really am sorry for what I did, but I was tired, I was angry, I was ignorant, I didn't know this, and there is some part of us that when we are involved in the evil and the bad of the world, that we feel like we should be given grace or a second chance. Have you ever done anything bad yourself? Or have you ever wanted to do something bad, but the only reason why you didn't do it was you thought maybe you'd get caught? I think if we're having an honest conversation about the evil in the world, we have to ask the question, why doesn't God judge me? Because there's evil in us. If God were to deal with the evil in us, then he would have to punish us. If the plan was just to snap away all evil in the world, bam, in one instance, would we not ourselves be snapped away? Then there would be, if all evil and all evildoers were removed, there would be nobody to ask the question even about why would God allow evil things? Because everybody would be gone. And then, along with it, free will would be gone. There would be only people who had no other choice but to do good. I want you to consider today our anchor verse for the whole series. It's in Revelation 21, verses 3 to 4. It says, "And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and he will be his people, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away.'" How will we get there? How will we get to this good place where we're with God, there's no more suffering, there's no more evil in this world? How can we get there when we ourselves are very, very much part of the problem that God has to solve? We make up mankind. We make up humanity, and in many cases, we are the cause of sorrow. Mankind is evil, and we are unfaithful. So let's begin this series with an honest view, or an honest look at our state. That human arrogance and rebellion has caused deep problems in our world and in our life. You know, when we get to Revelation chapter 1 all the way to chapter 3, we looked at the 7 love letters, right? And then you get to chapter 4 of Revelation, and that's the throne room of heaven. When we get to chapter 5, there is a big dilemma that takes place up in heaven, right? It says that there was a scroll in the right hand of the person who sits on the throne. A scroll. And nobody could open that scroll. A mighty angel proclaims with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the scroll and break its seal?" And it says in 5 verse 3 that no one in heaven or on earth or under earth was able to open the scroll or look into it. And this mighty angel in verse 4 begins to weep loudly because no one was worthy to be able to open or look into it. And then you get Jesus being revealed as the lion and the lamb, who's the only one who can open it. Why is it such a big deal opening this scroll? Let me put it to you that whoever opens the scroll has to deal with what is contained in it. You have to deal with the fact that in order to save humanity, we need to deal with our sinful nature and some of the problems that humanity has never been able to solve. Why is it that no one in heaven or under earth or on earth has been able to solve these problems? We've been alive as humans for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, yet some of the world's problems are just getting worse. Can we solve the sin in our lives? Jesus has solved this in chapter 6. Jesus opens up the scroll, unleashes all of these things because his end game is actually to solve the personal sin and evil in our lives. Let's look at in chapter 6 some of these examples of the things that are in the seals that are kept. There's in chapter 6 verse 2, conquering. Verse 3 and 4, there is no peace, there's no shalom, and there's all kinds of fighting, right? So the strong oppress the weak. In verse 5, crisis hits the poor, right? It says in 6 verse 5 that the black horse comes and the rider has scales in his hands. And in verse 6, it says that a quart of wheat for a denarius and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, which is basically like 8 to 16 times the normal price of these wheat and barley. And it says, do not harm the oil and the wine. Why is that? Because the rich are untouched. The rich don't pay the price, but the poor pay the price. And so you see rising injustice. There is, in verse 7, death and natural destruction. It gets so bad when the seals are open. Just opening up that seal causes so much destruction that in verse 10, we're crying out, why is there no justice? And then in verse 17, it goes, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who can stand? One of the reasons why there is so many bad things happening in the book of Revelation, why there's such terrible imagery that takes place in the book of Revelation is because the seal is open and there is a looking in on how bad and how dirty and how broken humanity is. It peels back that layer. And God's solution to that is not to snap all of us away or to in one hit destroy all of humanity. Rather, he addresses it with the cross, with love, with, as the Bible says in chapter 5, being the lamb that was slain. He wins us a good victory. He is like a surgeon who goes in to deal with the dirt, the evil, and the sin, and pays the price for victory. Every surgeon, before they open up the wound, before they go in to cut out the disease, has to make sure that they can restore the person to a better state, that they can deal with the issues. But once they open, things definitely get worse before they get better. In this session, I hope you'll have a discussion that looks at God's end game. In this session, God's end game is to deal with our human evil.